Hello and welcome back to Align Your Stars podcast. I'm your host, astrologer, transformation life coach, and energy healer, Lumi Palenko. Today, we're going to be introducing to you Francesca Verri, a woman who I met about a year back. She's such an incredible, beautiful, lovely goddess who extends so much of her incredible services for those who want to live a much more decluttered life. So I'd love to introduce to you with her incredible credentials right now before I invite her into the room. Francesca Verri is a life architect who uses her 21 years of experience as a certified minimalist life coach and professional organizer to help people who are cluttered and overwhelmed streamline their life, gain space in their head and home, and make sustainable changes so they can juggle family and work more efficiently, manage day-to-day routine sanely, and live more intentionally. Francesca believes deeply that when you keep in your head, heart, and home what serves you positively, you're freer to make the best lifestyle choices and actively create the life that you love. I cannot wait to explore this deeper. So let's dive in. All right. So we have Francesca. How are you today? And thank you so much for joining the Align Your Stars podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really well, friend. I mean, it's been like we've known each other for like how long now? Like a year now, I think, right?
And we might even be longer than a year, but
I
yes,
can't believe it. Yeah, we
it
met
feels like so much longer.
I
It really
know.
does,
Yeah.
right?
We have that lovely like sun moon conjunction, as I mentioned before when we started recording this. Like you got that nice sun in Capricorn, Libra rising, and the moon in Pisces, and just such a beautiful big three. And your moon is 22 degrees Pisces, and my sun's 22 degrees Pisces. When we made that connection a year back, I was like, oh my God, it's incredible how I
Meant to
commonly
be.
see that, like as an astrologer. Yeah.
Look
Usually
at
those
that.
parallels are
See, I
really cool.
shocked you.
Yeah, you did shock me. And that's usually how like incredible how like when you meet certain people, you just feel like such a true connection. And
Mhm.
I feel like when we met each other actually like during the Authorpreneur on Hay House Publishing, and
Yep.
we had a breakout room in one of the live calls, and you're like, I need to know you. You
I
said
need to know you.
you said that. I was
Listen,
like,
I am not afraid to ask for what I need for sure. But when I meet somebody there was something about what you were writing in the chat. I was like, oh, I have to find her.
yeah, and
So
I felt like some memory or some like kind of familiarity when I met you too. So definitely the feelings mutual. That's so
love it.
cool. But I would love
Yeah.
like anybody who's listening to the show and watching it, I would love for them to know more about you. So for anybody who's listening to right now, can you tell them about yourself and how you got to this point in your life's work at this point?
Yeah, sure. So once upon a time, 20 years ago, it was more than 20 years ago. I guess it really started. I'm a minimalist coach. a professional organizer, call myself a life architect. And so I think like people, I always say it started with organization, right? But it morphed. Lots of things morphed. I had this realization that I had this knack for order. I was working as an assistant dean at a college just outside of Boston, and it was a big job. It was layered and uh, called on me I had to be very organized, no pun intended. And I had to use these organizational skills and these productivity skills that I guess I think I always knew I had. I know I enjoyed it. It's very satisfying for me to have things run smoothly, right? From, not only just in my job, but I loved that I was helping other people around me. I was, coaching the students and the staff. I was definitely helping my administrative staff create order, which helped me do my job better. And my thinking at the time was that with organization, which is an ability to put your hands on what you need when you need it without stress and frustration, period, that you'd like your job more, that maybe you like your life more, you'd be happier because of it. And I felt really strongly that this was a thing, right? And that it had this power. And I wanted to help people feel what I knew organization would bring, which is a sense of calm and lightness and an ability to think more clearly and act more deliberately. And with those feelings, I'm thinking you could create your life better, right? So I started this organizing business, and that's what I'm going to do. Called it Very Organized, which is my maiden name is Verri. I created with that intention. And my tagline then was experience life in a lighter way. And I was like, that hits it. That's what I want people to have. And I wanted that for everyone. I knew organization was the key, or at least was part of it. In fact, after quite a few years, things, as they usually do, started to morph, and I started to see organization a little differently. I started to see it as a wellness tool, right? I wanted to experience more in that wellness field in general, so I wanted to marry the two. I thought this will be the next iteration of my business, because I felt like it was bigger. It was more than what people thought when they heard the word organization. It was more than just bins and pretty containers and closets. Every person who met me, and I'd say, I'm a professional organizer. Oh, so you organize closets? And I thought, oh, yeah, okay. But there was so much more, and I wanted to shift that perception so I could help more people holistically, right? So I decided to get certified as an holistic health coach, holistic health and lifestyle coach. And I was fascinated with this piece of wellness because a few years prior, I had made some changes to my own health, and it brought this sort of transformation that led me basically to where I am now in my late 30s, after going through many painful and just really difficult fertility treatments that I think I knew in my gut were not going to work, but that's another story for another podcast. I was looking for more holistic ways, basically, to be healthy and to get pregnant. I didn't like, there was a lot of noise, and I was hearing it from doctors and outside influences telling me, you're too old. It filled my head with these limiting thoughts.
In the late 30s, they said you were too old.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
After 35, they start, and I was 39.
Wow.
So the chances, according to them,
yeah.
So it was, I think that all these things were going through my head, and I was aware of them, but I think intellectually I knew, well, you should think that way. But I was starting to really believe it, because it's hard when because it's a doctor, and that's what you're supposed to do.
You're vulnerable and all that stuff. Yeah, you're exposed.
Correct, right? So I had gotten some tests done earlier, and I had learned that I was allergic to gluten and dairy, and I had heard that there was this link to those sensitivities and those allergies with infertility. So I was like, I am going to, because let's solve the problem. What do I got to do? I love to solve the problem. So I was like, okay, I'm going to change my diet, which I did. I got rid of anything that was inflaming my body, gluten, dairy, refined sugar. And I started to let go of all this noise that came from listening solely to doctors that were telling me what my body was capable of. I started to shift my mindset. It was the first time I remember feeling this shift, in a sense, in my mind, to this idea that I had more control over my health and wellness. Like, don't you tell me. I'm going to tell you. I started to feel like I can choose how I want to live my life. I can decide what to keep and what to let go of. I have power. And that's when I started calling myself a life architect, because I was like, wait a minute, I help people do the same thing in their life, get clear on what they wanted, and then build their life on a solid foundation, right? So I believe very strongly that you get to choose the contents of your life, the thoughts, the thoughts, things, and even those people that will help you create that life and live it in the way that you intend. It's what minimalism is at its best. People hear that and they, oh my God, that means you have nothing. And I'm saying, no, you have everything. You have all that you need, all that makes you happy and fulfilled, and you let go of the rest. So for me, that's when minimalism, I think, unbeknownst to me, honestly, because you hear the word, but it started to take root. And then 3 years after I made all my changes, got my certification as a holistic health and lifestyle coach, and I got pregnant on my own at 43. And it was like, I wanted to just call every doctor. It ended in a miscarriage, and a lot of people, oh, it's so sad. And it was gutting. It was so sad. But I remember feeling it did two things in particular that have changed a lot of things for me. It affirmed for me, it affirmed that power, that I have
Yes.
in trusting that my body can do hard things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though it wasn't the result I thought that I wanted. And that's the thing about minimalism, really, and quieting the noise and letting go. It opens you up to these possibilities and other ways of living and being that you might never have imagined, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing it did was it set in motion this other iteration of my life's work. I was 44 and my husband and I did something most people don't do in midlife. And we adopted our daughter from foster care. I was, here I am in midlife and I am sure I know everything that I need to know about my life. I know who I am, all the stuff, but it just kind of disappeared. And I say that with love because obviously our daughter is the best thing in my life. But motherhood brought a lot of turmoil for me and a lot of triggers I didn't know I had about myself. I felt like I was losing myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't get on top of things. I couldn't, I was mentally cluttered. There was just so much that I felt like I didn't have time to figure out and sort out. And so it was a very familiar feeling, which is the good news because, you know, I guess I kind of knew what I needed to do. My life was blown to smithereens. My sister says that's like your life was blown to smithereens and you got to put all the pieces back together. And I had to use minimalism. It
Mm-hmm.
started to come to the surface again because I had to think what works and what doesn't. Let go of the things that are in the way, all that noise, people's opinions, comparison, which was huge for me, a lot of limiting beliefs. Am I doing this right? Am I good enough? Never felt like I was good enough. And I had to pay attention to sort of what was making me feel really messy and let go, which is hard work. I try and tell people today, and this is what I was doing, measure up what I want to feel and how I was actually feeling, right? And decide what's causing it, what can stay and what can go. I don't mean to make it sound too simple, but that's the basis, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to teach people. Get clear, develop what I call as this minimalist mindset. Do that mental warm up, let go.
Mm-hmm.
And then you streamline your life, right? Then you organize. And so life flows and runs smoothly and you can experience life in a lighter way and live a life you love. So today, we talked a little bit about where, from our writers group, I'm writing a book about developing that mindset, why it's so important, right? And I'm using minimalism throughout everything. It's the basis of a new online course that I am hopefully launching soon. So I don't know when this is going to air, but hopefully it'll be launched by then. It's called Conquer Your Clutter and Live an Intentional Life, and it helps you develop that mindset, do all that mental warm up, and then learn the tenets and processes to get organized. Because I think that's it, you'll do it more efficiently and effectively
It's so
if you
needed.
know what you have and what you. Yeah,
Yeah.
look at it. It's
In this
this. I think
culture, yeah. We're like such
there's
a
so
hoarder
much,
culture in
so
everything. Like
much.
we consume everything. We want everything. I want more. I want more. And like I feel
Yeah,
like people who want to fill the void, they buy things that they don't need, or
yeah,
they have thoughts that they don't need in their head,
yeah.
or
Or they hang on to relationships that serve them not one iota, right?
yes.
We don't look really at like who is it that I want to be? I mean, it
Yeah.
sounds and look, I coach people one on one. I have um I do remote organizing, I do hands-on organizing. There's always some component though of me saying, well, all right, let's look at your space.
Mm-hmm.
How do you want to feel in your space?
Mm-hmm.
Because and I say, well, how do you want to feel? And they say, I want to be organized. No, that's
There's
like the
more to it.
final. No, that's not a feeling. What does organized bring you?
Mm-hmm.
What's the feeling you want to feel in the space? And I think it's so important because then you're taking control of your life. Obviously you live with someone else. You have to do things based on, you're working with other people maybe in your space. I'm not saying just because you say it goes, but it is having a better understanding of what do you want. I think people don't, it's easier. I think it's harder to do that digging, and minimalism forces you to dig. It forces that
There's
intentionality.
scare. Yeah, you get scared.
Yeah.
Because it's going to
And
expose
I
a
get
lot.
it. Yes.
Yeah.
Because you know what it is? They focus on, or what I find, at least with my clients, and in general, what I write about is that you're focusing on what you're letting go of. You're focusing on the letting go, what you're losing, but you're not losing anything, because what you're doing is you're letting go of the things that aren't serving you at all. And now everything's open.
You're inviting
now,
something new in your life.
100%.
Because
It might
it's
have already
open.
been there. Now you're uncovering it, right? There's a
Yeah.
freedom to being able to say, like, oh, I got space in general. I call it creating space and spaces. So you're creating space like in here, but you're creating spaces that, like in the kitchen, I want to lose weight or I want to eat healthier. Let's create the space, right? If you can't find the counter, it's really hard to reach that goal, right? So I want to create the spaces, but I want the mental space as well. I want people to feel that freedom of being able to say, I'm the life architect. I'm my own life architect. I can choose.
Yeah.
Right.
I went
And
completely
choose wisely.
Even months back, like when I was like around, oh my God, it's like because in the filming of this is like the second lunar eclipse of the year.
Oh,
and the last
that threw
time
me
the
for a loop.
lunar eclipse back in May, it was in Scorpio. And this time around, lunar eclipse is in Taurus this past weekend. But the lunar eclipse in Scorpio back in May, I was on completely shut off mode. I wanted to remove sugar from my diet. I wanted to remove gluten from my diet and as well as dairy from my diet. And I was just like, oh my gosh, because I was thinking of like needing to declutter
Yes.
my body because I felt the need to
Yep.
like completely clean out. And because you mentioned the kitchen, I just like immediately my mind flashed back to 6 months ago where a little less than 6 months ago, where I had to create the change I needed. Because
That's correct.
of course I went through a little bit of trauma last year and anxiety and all that stuff, but definitely from the food I was ingesting, definitely escalated even more so.
Yeah.
And once I
absolutely.
cleared out all that stuff, oh my
It's
gosh.
amazing.
I cried a lot though that weekend. I'm telling you, like a lunar eclipse on top of that, but I felt like it was the withdrawal symptoms of the sugar and the gluten,
Oh,
all that
absolutely.
stuff.
But
Oh
and
my
crying,
gosh.
crying is a purge anyway.
Yeah.
Which we need to do from time to time. I rely on that sometimes. But no, but I think I always tell people when something feels heavy, whatever it is, right? Clean something, let go of something, and it might not be physical.
Yeah.
It could be. I think you wrote it recently about what you're doing with the waning gibbous, that you're writing something.
Oh my gosh, you read my newsletter yesterday. Yeah, because I feel like when the full moon happens every day leading to the new moon, which is 14 days, every day let's release one thought a day and burn it at the end of the day. Like hold on to it for the day just to see if you truly want to release something. And then by the time the end of the day happens, nightfall, burn it if you don't want it anymore in your space.
And I would say, I mean, it's genius because it's true.
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah. It's
no,
like
but it could really
14 thoughts or whatever you're feeling at the moment that you want to release. Go ahead.
Well, that's the thing. No, because that's the point, right? That there are things that, and so when you're forced to say, like, you're forcing that intentionality on people, which is great. Hey, well, hold on a second. If something doesn't feel, write it down. The whole burning of the thing, I love that. But anyway, like even just going, like you're thinking of going up into the atmosphere, it might not even be, not that it wouldn't be negative, but I just think it's important to, it's that whole release thing. It doesn't matter. Maybe if it's meant to be, it comes back, that whole, cliche thing. But I think that we are afraid of letting go. And I think it reveals something about who we are. I think when you let go, you dig deep, and then all of a sudden, and you have to then know who that person is. And then, well, what if that, what if I don't know, what if I can't do it, or what the what ifs, right? And I hear that a lot, obviously, when I'm physically helping somebody. Well, it doesn't matter even if it's mental stuff, but with physical clutter specifically.
Yeah, it's the ego talking.
Right.
Totally ego.
Yeah.
Ego wants you to like hold on to everything. Like override you.
For
just
safety.
Let's take a fun ride on you. Let's see how much you can really go into that topsy-turvy, chaotic mind. We love it. That feeds more of the energy into the negativity. And that's what actually fuels more of your insecurities, I should say. And
that's right.
It never ends. It's like a continuous merry-go-round.
That's right.
And doesn't stop. But really, I feel like for your methodology, and as well as for anybody who's going through the need for clearance, they really have to go into the still mind and understand what's the core of the issue here.
That's
I want
correct.
to ask you, can you tell us like a common issue that people experience in their lives that leads to clutter? What do you think? Like in terms of your practice, like have you seen any parallels?
A common experience that they,
Yeah, like
yeah.
experience in our lives
Um,
that like lead to clutter. Like what is like the most common issue?
well, if we're talking internal stuff, it's that enoughness, I think. I mean, I don't mean to say like I work with a bunch of people who don't feel like they're enough, but I think that
Yeah.
everyone kind of experiences that like I'm not enough. And so therefore, like everyone has, I think when there's a lot of clutter, the excuse is not really what's really happening. Well, I
Mhm.
don't have time to, and whatever. It's always that. Really, what it is that something caused you. And actually, when I dig with people who like for in their closet, for instance, clothes is always the big thing. Like I went shopping because and they're willing to admit. A lot of people do. It makes me feel good.
Uh-huh.
That's one of those things. Like I there's something that doesn't, or I'm going to eat something, right? So, but
Yeah.
I'm dealing with the physical stuff. But I might find a whole bunch of things in a pantry, and I'll say, well, I was going to, and we didn't end up, or I tried it, I didn't like it. Why is it still here? Well, because I just didn't. So, but typically, I think I mean, I probably would say it's that enoughness. It's that
Yeah.
feeling that I've, and again, I don't, sometimes it's hard because I think that there might be real practical reasons why, look at, we, we thought we needed 6 of these and whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I think that there are people who are cluttered with they buy excess, right?
Mhm.
But that stems from, I believe, this, you know, they go and they buy things in bulk. And I said, but you don't have room for it, or have you used it all? And it comes from like, what, just in case, what I'm, it's like not having enough, which I think
Yeah.
is code for maybe not everybody, but I know for me, it's not being
Yeah.
enough. It's like, have these things, you know, stick to you and be around you.
Yeah. It's a
So it's
scarcity
probably
mindset, I think.
scarce. It is. And that's
It's
one of the thought
scarcity
patterns.
completely.
Yep.
Yes.
That's one of the thought patterns I teach in my online course, and certainly with when I do coaching, because it's, I think a lot of people have it, and I don't think there's any shame in
Of
it. I think
course.
it's, it's the truth that we were afraid of not having enough when we have ample. We have more than we really, when you think about it. I used
Yeah.
to say, like, when I would organize offices, 80% of what goes in a filing cabinet, you're never even going to look at it again. Same thing goes for what's in your closet.
Yes.
But there's the safety. We feel like, well, what if I need, and
You should see
it's
all the
funny because,
Oracle cards I have. I got to get rid of them.
well, my thing is, what I tell people is, like it, need it, use it.
I've had
Right.
it for
And
over
so,
the years, though. It was just something I collected over time. It's just like it's like
you're not
tarot
using them all.
tools, Oracle
Ah,
tools. I'm
ah.
honestly like admitting it. It's like in my
You're like, I'm
office
looking at it
closet
right
right now
now.
in the corner with all these books. My mother gave them all to me. Like she's like, take them away. She's like, these are yours. I'm like, well, can't you guys keep it in storage for now? They're like, no, take it with you. I'm like, oh, I'm like, oh
Yeah,
my gosh, I gotta
it's
sell them.
forcing you. Yeah, well, yeah, because it's forcing you to say, well, wait a second. But it's hard to say, well, hold on a second, because what if I needed it in a time? Or you think, but they serve such a good purpose,
I'm gonna
I
sell
remember when
them.
I did this. Good.
I'm going on
And I would like
Mercari.
and
Yeah,
I would
because
like the
you remind
text,
every time you text me, I'm like, oh my God, I gotta go on Mercari and sell my tools
because
and my
look at,
books.
if you think about the people who will benefit in the same way
Yes.
you did from them, and
Yes.
that's all you focus on,
They gave
right?
me theirs too, though. My mother, she gave me her copies and my
Oh,
sister's copies. So
oh,
I have double the
oh,
amount of the tarot cards and
oh.
oracle cards. I'm like, I don't need all this. Like that you could sell it for us. I'm like, I have
For
this.
us. Yeah. That happens to a lot of people to be like, well, oh, my, so and so passed away and they gave me all this, so
Oh
and so
my
gave me all
gosh.
this stuff. And I said, it's because they didn't want to do it. They feel better that someone else will have to now do the dirty work, so to speak. It's
This is 2 years
hard.
ago too.
It's it's time, Lumi.
I gotta get
I
rid of
want
them.
I
I'm
want the
just like, well, they
text.
look so good. I'm gonna definitely send you the text. Yeah, and in full honesty, like for my case, I have an issue with buying books. Like now I'm getting better. I actually read the book one by
Okay.
one just to make sure
Okay.
I actually do with what I buy or I read with what I purchase.
Mhm.
But I have to sell them right after. you know,
Yeah. Or, I mean, or because you could go to a library. I don't mean this. I'm not saying this
that's
facetious,
a
but
great idea too. I have a
go to
library not too far from me and there's parking. So I'm just like, what's my excuse? It's
go
just,
to, well, no. Or sometimes people like to have their own, like if for pleasure,
yeah.
I put everything on my Kindle.
Mhm.
But for work, and I've purged what's behind me, it's time for another purge just because.
I love what you have behind you though.
Um, but I know exactly where I know exactly where everything is, and I kept things really specifically because a lot of them are for reference.
Yeah.
But when it's a work thing, what's the book? It's 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Berkman. I love this book, and it's taken me time to really go through it. But I like to feel the
You're
book
really
and I like to
digesting it.
highlight.
I do
So I'm
that
not going to
too.
take that from the library, and I'm going to own it. And it's I already know it's one of those books on productivity and time and habit and whatever that
You need it.
I'm
Yeah.
going to
And
refer
that's how
to.
I analyze what I buy nowadays. But before I was
Correct.
more like buy, buy, buy. Like it was bad, like for
I
me,
see.
like years
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
But now I
But
got
you
better.
wanted
Now
more information. And now what you're doing is you're discerning, well, what is the information I need right
that
now?
I need right
And
now.
because what
Exactly.
ends up happening is, and I've seen this with a lot of people too, is they
Hmm.
get all these things for all these good intentions. And maybe it's not the enoughness we're talking about, but it's more like, I want. But that serves as a reminder. You see all the
It's
magazines and the books and
overwhelming.
whatever, and you start to think, because this is where it all comes in. I'm not, again, I'm not saying this happens to everybody, but I'm saying that sometimes deep inside you start to say, I've got all these things and I haven't read them yet. And so instead of, well, I don't need them, or I got too many, made a mistake, I'll keep one, we start to think, I'm not doing well enough because I didn't read those books, and all the
Uh,
reminders of what you haven't done. So I always tell people, when you're looking at things, like especially, in an office or whatever room you're trying to create a nice calm feeling, if there's something that doesn't feel good, reminds you of the past, that makes you feel
yes.
sad or depressed, or why would you want that reminder's not going anywhere. You have to
Mhm.
remove the object or the thing or the thought that leads you to that. So get rid of it, right?
Yeah.
And see how you feel. You could even put it in a box. You could put all that stuff in a box and put it. I don't know if you have a garage, probably not. Do you have a
No,
garage?
I live in an
No. So
apartment.
okay, so really it's going to be glaring. You have to put it out of sight and
I
see if you
have them in
actually, but you
bins,
already know.
like little organizer bins, but I see that it's like kind of like, like the lid is like a little up. I was just like, gonna get rid of
That's
this
right. That's
stat.
right.
But you know
Yeah.
something, I had a client not too long ago, actually. She's one of my transformation coaching clients. I said to her, I'm like, the root cause of her issues of her, because I usually work with clients who are in relationships that they need to see if they want to stay in the relationship or they want to go,
Mm,
or they're in a path in their life where they feel like they need to find empowerment within themselves in order to attract a better relationship. Like those are my kind of clientele. Now, this
yeah.
girl, not to, mention any names or anything like that,
No.
she basically was like, I have a lot of stuff. I'm like, I feel like intuitively from what I'm receiving, like in your basement, it needs to be cleaned up. And she was like, you're right. And I said, once you clean everything out, that's when the clarity will kick in about your
That's
relationship.
correct. 100%. It could
Yeah.
be a relationship, it could be
And
whatever your
anything.
next best move is, right? And
Yes.
it's funny that you're saying basement. I always say basement and attic. Everyone,
Yes.
because
Yes.
you don't see them, but you feel it.
Yes. Because it's
You might know
subconscious.
what's in correct, and you feel that weight. So everything in your space can look all great, and it's like something's not working. And let me see your closets. Like I want to see the places. I always say people hide things behind doors and in drawers, and we shut it, and it's okay. We're good, but we're not good. You're not good until you have to open that drawer, and can't get it open. You can't find and then you're frustrated, and you shut it again. Okay, it's fine.
Mhm.
No, you're putting things in that you don't want to make a decision on.
It's like
People put things in the
stifling
basement.
your emotions and stifling your
Correct.
subconscious, because even the
Correct.
birth chart, from what I see also with people's birth charts, whenever I see a lot of eighth house energy, eighth house is the subconscious realms. It's like even the womb region of a woman.
Huh.
That's like the basement, because the eighth house represents
Ah,
the endocrine area of our bodies to some extent. It's like how we digest things and how we release. Whereas the 12th house is more about like the higher consciousness mindset, and as well as the in-between realms. So that's like more of like the auric field of the energy that we have.
wow.
So if ever I see a lot of activity there, a lot of people barricade themselves with like karma or barricade themselves with the past that they didn't make peace with and such. So it's like the next step in the journey. So the eighth house is more like the physicality of what are they stuffing and as well as what are they
Yeah.
divesting. Whereas the 12th house is like the layover of that energy and like what are you doing
Yeah.
to, you know, make peace with what's been done and so forth. Does that make sense?
It's oh, it's
Yeah.
so it's so fast every time you talk because because the thing cool astrology is the coolest thing. I just have to say, I got my chart read. I think it was right after we had adopted,
Uh-huh.
and I felt like there was this like insight into myself, about who I really am. Like it's just another way. It's another way of knowing
Yes. It's
who
another
you
part of
are.
you. Yeah.
It's just different from the traditional ways you think about knowing yourself, right?
Yes.
There's, I don't know, there's,
It's like the information that your soul took with you. Like it's like the tools that
yeah,
you have been instilled with before you decide
right.
to incarnate. It's the
It's,
layover past lives, if you believe in that. It's all this information that you have generated over time and space.
yeah,
And in the now, what are you doing to work with this? What are you doing to
yeah,
transmute any obstacles that you've experienced? Or how are you channeling your strengths into powering yourself up in your journey and so forth? It
yeah,
just continues. And any obstacles that you've experienced before, it's not to say that you're meant to live out those experiences forever. You're given this right and free will to transmute those experiences into power and motivation. That's how I usually see
yeah,
astrology. And that's how I work with astrology as well. And even seeing your birth chart, oh my gosh, like you're just like Libra rising, you're ruled by
yay.
Venus and Capricorn. Like, the Venus and Capricorn is like a CEO mindset or your
Oh,
mindset. Yeah, it's like the
there you
CEO
go.
badass woman of the zodiac, like Venus and
Oh,
Capricorn. Like your
that's
strength
great.
is through empowering others and really motivating people, especially women, getting to point A to point B with their motivations. And you usually have this incredible laser mindset of how it, narrowing down the core of people's issues and how to get them to where they need to go. So you're such a motivational
That's
person,
it. See,
you
and when
know.
you say that, I know you
Mhm.
know me, but when you say that, it's like that puts into words exactly, when you say that core, we talk about simplicity, and I always say, like, what's
Yeah.
the easiest way to, I'm not saying it's actually I shouldn't say it's not easy to do, but it's not difficult when it's your
Mhm.
choice. I think that when you decide that you want to make a change or whatever,
Mhm.
but I try and get to that, like, and then let's just
Yeah,
do it. Because I
you're
always say
you're
this.
very punchy, like in a good way. You're like,
Like,
boom, we're here.
yeah.
You're like, let's see
Well,
what's in front of you. Like you
yeah.
don't really sugarcoat. Even though you are
No,
Libra
I don't.
rising. Libra rising is usually Libra energy in general. It's more about like, let's see what other people think. But you're in your case, because you're ruled by
No.
Venus. Venus is in the sign of Capricorn. It's like taking the notch higher of going beyond the superfluous and really getting to the core issue of
Going
things.
to the courses. Yeah. Well, that's funny because
Yes, empowering
my
through those core issues.
empowering through. Yeah. Well, that because I always tell people like, everything can be figured out.
Mhm.
There's always, I tell my daughter, there's all, no, well, I can't because, oh, no, no, well, you can because there's always a way. It's whether or not you want to find the way. We can figure it out. Can
Mhm.
figure it out. What, pick and choose certain things. But I love that. My best friend knows that. She's like, you don't sugarcoat anything. I'm like, well,
Nope.
and sometimes that's, so for some people they don't want to hear that, and that's okay. But I feel like, listen, if you want to do something, you want to make a change, and you want to feel a certain way, we can do it. If you don't, or you want to, we can walk around things. I don't mind that, but I'm always trying to encourage people to keep, come on, we can keep doing this because it can be very difficult, especially in the face of clutter and things that scare you, to
Yes.
want to retreat, and so I try and I, use some tough love, but it's love, still
When
love.
you're working with clients though, like where do you go first to analyze their clutter? Like where do you usually go first? Like I know you mentioned the closets before, but like are there any
Yeah.
other areas of the home? Like if you could break down your like process to how you work with clients, like do you navigate through with the state of their issue? as the guide to where you need to go to analyze your state of clutter, or is there
Yeah,
any other ways that you could do it?
I usually start with a conversation about, what do you have going on? Tell me what does it look like? What does it feel like? Tell me, oh, this is really clutter. Tell me about the clutter. What does it look like? Well, it was because we did, and then I get an idea of like sort of how this clutter came to be, because that's one of the things in my program. I help because it's a self directed program, but I'm guiding you to sort of like, well, let's think about how did this clutter happen, right? Because it happens differently for people, like we were talking about earlier. So I would start really with the conversation, and then I want to see the space. And when I see the space, I'm just sort of looking around to see what's on flat surfaces, because that's a basic tenet of organization, that they should be clear. Nothing should be on a flat surface, not a bed, desktop, countertop, the floor. Everything is clear. You're using those to cook the meal or do your work, right?
Yes.
But you're not storing things there. Typically, you're not storing things. Maybe, you have things for the next day. But so I've got these organizational systems to apply, but I want to know what the stuff is first, because, if you need it, we've got to put it in a way that you can find it again. So if they say, a lot of times it's a kitchen, do a lot of kitchens, offices. Actually, it's the whole house. It could be the whole house. It's never just the closet. That's the thing. And that's what used to make me laugh. People are like, oh, so you organize closets. And I thought,
no, surface.
well, I mean, yeah, but like that's nothing. You know what I mean? We can start there, but there's no way that that's not going to be like, well, where does this go? We'll go somewhere. Okay, now we're going to go to another room. There's always, it builds. So I'm first looking at what their clutter is, and then we are quite literally sorting, what I call sort and discard. We're looking through and making decisions on what can go, or what can stay. Sometimes one's easier than the other for someone to do. And we're sorting. And then, when we know something can go, it's kind of what I call clearing the decks, getting rid of those things. It could be a donation. It could be trash. Maybe it belongs to your sister down the street. That's where it's got to go, right? Because a lot of times we're holding on to things that, oh yeah, I'm just going to put this for a minute. This has to go to so-and-so. And then what clutter does is, it sees this miscellaneous thing on the desk, and then something else miscellaneous comes in. I hate the word miscellaneous. And you go, I'm just going to put it here.
Because it's the most random objects that you have on your desk.
Right. So it breeds clutter, right? So all of a sudden your mind says, well, you didn't know what to do with that. You don't have to do this. We'll put that together. So now they have a little party together, and we have a whole bunch of clutter, and all you need to do is now sort it. And a lot of times it isn't stuff you need, but sometimes it is. And that's why I think people are afraid of. She's going to tell me to throw away everything. I'm not telling you to throw away anything. I'm making suggestions on
That's
you.
The way
making
I
a
am
decision.
though. I throw away everything when I'm sick of it. I'm like, throw away these shoes. I don't need them. I don't need this. I don't need this. Because I clean out I purge. Like whenever I am going through, like my lunar eclipse experience back in May, I was going through like physical changes, but I threw away everything in my closets as well.
So
or
sometimes you get to that point where you're so sick
tired.
Right, you're tired, and you're not, I mean, at least for me, I'm not like, I'm just gonna throw anything away. I am, and I know you are.
I analyze
what
too,
you're doing.
yeah, of course, but I get,
but you know what you want to do, you know how you want to feel, and you know that the end result of that will be if I let something go. I think with my clients, that's their biggest fears. And I just had someone say to me a few days ago, you're going to make me throw away things. And I said, oh no, I'm not.
Would you need to throw away everything?
Well, because it's not it's really right. It's not my job to make you do anything. I'm trying to bring you to
an awareness,
to an awareness of how you want to feel. And then we're going to measure that up against, well, all this stuff is here. So if we're looking at a countertop that's cluttered, you might find that you need all of that stuff. And I go, well, that's a good thing that now we're sorting it and we're putting it in the right place. Because remember I said, organize, put your finger on what you need, when you need it, without stress and frustration.
Wow.
Right. So if it's, I'm not saying you don't need all this pile of stuff. I'm saying the reason why it's piled is because there is no system, and you're not thinking, you're just putting them down on the flat surface that you're not supposed to put anything down on to store, because that's where it all piles up. You need to make decisions. And I think that's hard when you don't have, or when it goes in one area, but that area is cluttered.
Mm-hmm.
So I sometimes try and find the reason why I start in closets or in a drawer small. We start small.
Mm-hmm.
Start small. You have to start small.
Yeah.
Is because I'm trying to find first of all, the closet is often the place where I can build a system. So when it's clear, now we can start to visualize what a system would look like,
Mm-hmm.
right? If it, for instance, in a bedroom, clothes go in a closet, maybe we put shelves in there, what have you. But we start small in that way. We weed out things, and I'm trying to find sort of that lowest common denominator. Let's just get us down to ground zero,
Mm-hmm.
and let's just work our way up, right? So we do this closet, and we know that all this goes in that space. We're not going in that space, not yet. We're going to stay here. And that's
Mm-hmm.
part of what working with a coach does, because you get that shiny objects syndrome. I posted a video on my YouTube channel recently about this. Like, that's the biggest mistake people make. They go, oh, this belongs in the guest room. And they go in the guest room, like, come back. Don't forget to come back. Because you go into the guest room and all of a sudden oh my God, I got to do this. And
then everything looks like a complete mess when you're organizing the whole house or the apartment. Yeah, it gets
have to stay in one, like,
you have to stay one
complete
place
that
at a
one little
time.
thing. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think that people really do want the whole thing done. And that's another
They get
reason why they don't
overwhelmed
start,
too.
because they're like, I can't do it all. Well, of course you can. It's called eating an elephant whole. Who wants to do that? You got to start with the toe. You start with the toe.
That makes
No
sense.
indigestion. Yeah. So we
Wow.
start small. We start in one area. When I'm working with them, when I'm with somebody, I can manage the show, right? So I can say, I want you to do this, and I got my hands on something else. When I'm remote coaching, though, that's where it's really important to say we're staying in this drawer, because I'm not there to start doing other stuff, and I want them to stay focused. And the same thing with coaching, with anything, though, with anything you're trying to overcome, any way you're trying to even become a minimalist or whatever, you have to start small.
What do you suggest for people who live in small spaces, like apartments, like not studio apartments, actually? Because I think studio apartments, well, I've seen studio apartments where it's just like compiled a lot, easy, because people just want to attract bigger things over time. They're like, maybe if I buy this thing, maybe it'll make me happier. I used to live in a 1-bedroom. I told you about this a year ago. It was like a 500 square foot. It was so small. I didn't buy anything that year. I was just like, I cannot.
No, where would you put it?
Because clutter would drive me crazy. And it does usually. It was just like, and especially shoes. Shoes are huge. And I had to get bins where I would store it in my closet, like in alignment with all of my husband's shoes and my shoes. He has an insane amount of shoes, more than I do. It's pretty crazy. Really? I got rid of them though. He didn't know.
They really,
I'm guilty.
They really don't. That's all right.
Luckily now I live in a 2-bedroom. Soon I'm going to be moving to my other residence. Yeah, it's going to be even bigger. It's going to be 1,000 square foot. But I noticed when I moved to my 2-bedroom, I started, my mother brought me all my stuff. I mentioned like the tarot cards and the oracle cards. You
filled the spaces.
Yeah.
As I say, you grew to your environment. We tend to do that.
Now I'm like monitoring. I'm thinking mindfully. You even suggested that to me, like before you get something, just analyze as to why.
But you should be asking the questions. So,
for the studio apartments,
for the studio apartments, I would, or any space really, though. You do want to question before you bring anything in. You always should. I don't care how big your space is. I think that you have to look at the storage that you have. I mean, I know 500 square feet, you probably have like one closet, but let's just say you have more closets than
surprisingly.
So the thing is, I say use whatever you have for storage, use that to the best of your abilities. So for instance, if we were doing your bedroom and you had no closet, but you would have dressers, you're going to be organizing and keeping things best that would store best in drawers, right? But you have to use your walls and the backs of doors well. It really, you have to be, aside from not letting in too much. And I know it sounds like, well, I don't know if it feels unfair. I don't know. I think that you have to live within the limits of your space, right?
Yes.
Smaller spaces, 500 square feet, talk about forcing intentionality. You have to be pretty darn sure, or you're just going to be cluttered, right? But in terms of organizational strategies, wall space is best. Shelving behind doors, storing things behind doors,
Mhm.
pocket
I've
things
seen those
behind
before. I
doors.
never got that actually. I didn't have the courage to because I knew how I would feel
Feel you
if
don't
I'd
want to see
seen
it.
that on the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
It would drive me
Yeah.
nuts.
Yep.
And some
Yep.
people, they could live with that, but for me, I like things clear, especially the
Yeah.
doors, because
Yeah.
I just
Oh,
couldn't
I hear
put
you. I
myself
hear
through
you.
it.
I think that there are, when you have a small space, you have to start getting really creative with what,
Yeah.
the ottoman also stores this, or, you have a pull-out couch that you can store extra linens. It's little
Yeah.
things you have to add in. Because obviously it's not realistic. You're not gonna not have anything.
Yeah.
So it's based on, and this is the other thing I teach people is like, what's your preference? How do you use things and how do you like to see things? Like you just said, you don't like things to be seen. A lot of right brain people, very creative people might tend to want to like make sure they can see certain things. It's the
Mhm.
left brain that sort of wants things. Let's put things like my filing is back there. It's in
Mhm.
file boxes. I got rid of a
Mhm.
file cabinet because I didn't want so much stuff in the space. But there are people who might want to see that out. I don't want to see it out. Right. So you have to think about your preferences. It could be color coded, it could be alphabetized, whatever it is. So you think about what your preference is and how you want to see things, and then you're going to build a system based on that. So
Mhm.
if you have a small space, you have to get creative. You have to get creative with how you use your four walls, so to speak. And not, we're not breaking down walls, right? And until you move to a bigger space, you're sort of limited by that boundary. But we go beyond our limits. Even if you have more space, we start to feel like, well, I've got all this shelf space, so I'm going to fill it. And I'm not saying they then go shopping and they fill it, but what they end up doing is not organizing it well because it doesn't look right empty.
Yeah.
And I think, oh my God, I was working with somebody, she's in California, and she's like, I've got all the space and like, I don't have enough clothes. And I said, that's good news.
Wow.
And I said, what you can do, you have the opportunity now. It could be like a boutique. So you can divide your shelving because she has more shelving than she has hanging, right? So we're going to deal with that. I'm not going to tell her to rip out that. We're going to use what she has. And I was giving her the tools at the Container Store, how you can divide them and how you can create a drawer system. It's always good if there's a drawer that you're pulling out, you're getting what you need and you're pushing it back instead of just leaving it freestanding on a shelf, which can be, you have to make it perfect and it falls and then it gets cluttered. But I said, you could have like just white t-shirts, even if it's two of them, but you have the ability to really
Color code
separate things.
everything. I love that.
You can get really creative,
Oh, I
right?
used to do that all the time when my closet was big. I used to live with my parents. So a lot of people in this podcast probably know that by now. I got married at 30 and I moved right into my husband's house because, Albanian culture. But
Yeah,
my closet in my parents' house, wide. I used to rainbow coat
mm.
everything. It was so beautiful. Now I can't do
So
it anymore.
well, now you have to
It's
do
just
it on a much smaller scale. You can't have that
oh,
much,
I can't
and you
see
have
it
to get
though. It's like jam.
I know. I know.
Um,
I
yeah.
know. And so look at, if that's not your final resting place,
It's not.
certainly
I'm gonna
you
have a bigger
have to
closet in
get
my next place. Like we're having it
right.
renovated as we speak. It's gonna be like the same
So,
closet
oh,
now.
yay. So
Yeah.
good. I mean, so then everything you have is in front of you. Like everything in my closet, I don't have them in another closet. But I'm saying if you
Yeah.
have a smaller space, you have to then say, okay, well now I can only put. Courtney Carver does this. She's Be More with Less. She's a minimalist, and she does her Project 333, Project 33, Project 33.
Yeah.
Choose 33 items a season, and that's it.
Oh, that's
Right. And so I can have everything in my closet. I mean, my closet is big enough
I
that it
switch things
houses
out
everything.
by season.
And that's what you'd have to do. And that's
Yes,
what you
I
have to do.
do.
And so I would say maybe you get a little bit more discerning. So you're not getting rid of anything, so to speak. Although if you put your hands on something and you're
I
annoyed
did
by
get
it
rid of
and you
things
never
as I
wear it.
did it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's right.
I
Yeah.
do that every
It
season.
forces you to do that. Yeah. So that's what you probably have to do when you have a smaller space.
That's the upside.
Yeah. There's
Of
always
a
a silver
smaller
lining.
space.
That's right. I think the same thing would apply. The same tenets apply, the same processes you have to do. Not just, I'm not talking about like physically organizing, but I'm saying that mental warm up to do before. If you're in a small space, it's the same thing you would do if you had a large space, because if you fill the space, you'll eventually be cluttered. So
You
you
know
do want to make
something?
sure you're,
Yeah, I used to be
yeah,
much more cluttered before when I was living with my parents. I would have to go through like this whole
yeah.
seasonal clean out every season.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized
Mm-hmm.
how much I stuffed things in my closet. I used to do that all the time. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
mainly
A lot of people
again,
do.
my vice is books. It's books and tarot cards and crystals and like again, it's the new age junkie here. I used to do
Well,
that all the time. Now I don't buy things like crystals. Crystals
well,
was
because
just
you have
one
it,
thing.
but the thing is, if that's your thing, like when I've had people who have libraries like crazy, and I say, oh,
Too
are you
much
gonna,
for
and
me.
they say, but this is my thing, and I say, well, if this is your thing, we have to start bartering, because there are other things that can't
Yeah.
be as important, right?
For my
And that's what you
husband's
start to
shoes,
decide.
for me it's books.
Right. And so the thing is, if you have space for them and you feel good, how do you feel with having them all?
Yeah.
You're telling me it's a vice.
Mhm.
That's a negative connotation.
Yeah.
So it's
Because it's
interesting
overwhelming because even for myself, I was just like looking at
because it feels like too much.
it's way too much.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying you don't need the books. I'm saying there's something about having that much of that thing that you love that's telling you, I don't
You
need that much
mentioned it
of that thing
before
I love.
earlier. Yeah, and you mentioned earlier you're like feeling like I didn't get around to reading that book and I felt terrible because I didn't get
That's
around to
correct.
reading it.
That's what ends up happening, right? That's what
Yes.
ends up happening. You
And that's
start
why I
to
consider it a vice because it's just like it's way too much.
no, no, right. No, it is. No, it is, right?
Yeah.
It's like when people say to me, they're like, oh, every kitchen has to have a junk drawer. I'm like,
Nope.
why are we why are we, well,
Not in
I
my
said,
kitchen.
why are we calling it a junk drawer? Unless
Yeah.
that's what you're storing in there. It should be a utility drawer, and every kitchen should have one.
Yes.
Every kitchen should have drawers that function well. This isn't junk. I should have a place to put my junk. Oh, okay. Well, that's what you're going to store in there, because that's what you're calling it. That's what you're going to store in there, right?
Mhm.
So I know what they mean. Don't use
I've
those
seen
words
those
though.
drawers before where they put their tools in there, they put nails,
Oh,
screws,
so would
tape,
I.
stamps.
Everything.
Like I'm
Well,
just like,
and the thing is, that can be a functional drawer if it's organized well, so you can see very
oh my
specifically,
gosh.
right?
Mhm.
Grab the scissors, grab the, my daughter knows exactly where the, whatever those are called, the markers, the indelible markers, she needs whatever. But it's organized in a way that doesn't leave room for you to be like, let me just throw this. What's this? Nothing goes in this drawer because there's no room for it, because it's so organized, and that's the point. It's
Mhm.
used in the way it was intended. It's
It's like
not a
that,
drawer where it's like, let's throw everything in there.
it's like that. I don't know if you watch the Harry Potter movies. Have you watched them? It's like the
Mm-hmm.
room of requirement.
Mm-hmm.
Like where they enter the room and like whatever they need, it arrives at their foot or like wherever. It's like the
Right?
drawer of requirements.
Right?
Like
Right?
everything's in there. But
Everything's
anyway,
in
that
there,
just
which
came to my head.
yeah, but it's not possible for you to both live feeling good about your space and being able to put your finger on what you need, so you don't
Mhm.
have that stress, that added, where is the spinning wheels, moving things from one side to the other. I'm
Yeah.
going, people are coming over, oh my god, okay, let's move everything to a bedroom. Okay, you move everything to a bedroom, let's get everything, oh,
Mhm.
we can't move the laundry room, it's flooded with clothes that are, we got, you're always trying to move things around instead of building the habit, completing the process, putting things where they belong. My grandmother used to always say that there's everything in its place. I grew up that way. I mean, I think
Yeah.
my whole, it wasn't said, it was lived. My parents and me always go, everything has to have a home, but everything did. My mother created these, they're both quite organized in a way. My father grew up in the time of the war. And so, in Italy. And
Mhm.
so he has a minimalist mentality, it's not a lack of, it could be, it could
Yeah.
be, my husband grew up with his mother was from England, and she grew up in the time of the war, and the mentalities are similar but different, because there's a, what if we need it just in case, from my husband sometimes, and God bless him, different generation than my father. My father is sort of like, yeah, you use what you have. He's so grateful for everything he has. Until it's not, you don't need it anymore. Like, you would just really use something and respect it. It was always about respect of things,
Mhm.
and put things away. And when things are neat and put away, not perfect, there was nothing perfect, but there wasn't a lot of clutter. There wasn't a lot of tchotchkes. So I think
Yes.
that and it happens to be my personality anyway. What tchotchkes? Don't you love that word?
Tchotchkes. That word.
Try and spell it. Try and spell it. Writing my book, I was like, how does that? And it would not autocorrect the right way. I'm like, oh God, I know it starts with a T. Anyway, there wasn't a lot of that in general. There were four of us. My parents, we were four children. So my mother had to keep things right down to the meal plan or whatever. So I saw things not perfect, but I saw that things flowed well enough. And I think that my personality, being the oldest girl, wanting things to, wanting to please my mother and do all the right things and whatever, but I felt good with things put away. The bed was always made. My mother just sort of told us that's what you do. That's what we did. It felt good. I did it. I didn't
It does feel good.
Oh my God, it does.
Always.
And funnily,
routine.
it's the routine. It's the way that the space feels that you don't, if you're me, you go, this feels good, right? You start the day off on that organized foot right away, even if you don't know it, and the day follows. But when you return at the end of the day, it's like going to a hotel room and you walk in and the bed's all a mess and you'd be like, hello.
There's no housekeeping here. There's no room
There's
service.
no housekeeping. So you would get your money back, right? You expect it. So your bedroom can be that way all the time. You put your dirty clothes in the laundry, you hang up everything else. Nothing gets left on the chair or the floor. Flat surfaces are clear. Nothing's left on the bed. Flat surfaces are clear. And you get into a made bed. That's what that does psychologically for you. I've had people challenge me, well, why bother, Francesca? I'm just going to get back in it. And I say, well, why brush your teeth? You're just going to, eat again.
Yeah, it's very true. And
you're going to eat again. And so don't brush your teeth. Why bother? Well, because you don't want to be in the dentist chair. That's why.
Exactly.
That's why you do it. Right?
You don't want to end up there. And even your whole day is thrown off if you don't fix your bed or have that normal routine in the morning.
I think so. I think so. I believe so. I challenge people on that. If it's the only thing you do, I'm not, again, there's no perfection in this. This is called pull everything up as tight as possible, straighten they look good enough, and leave the room. That's it. You're less likely to clutter the space. You're less likely to clutter anything that looks neat and clean because it's going to stand out. And listen, again, it comes back to, well, how do you want to feel? How do you want to feel? I want to feel lightness, Francesca. I want to feel more in control. I want to feel on time. I want to feel fulfilled. Oh, okay. Well, let's create a space that allows that leaves you room for that, and then leaves you room to create and think of a different, maybe you're not in a good relationship, or you want more fulfilling work, or you want to start to cook healthier. The possibilities open up to you differently when you're not saddled with so much other stuff on.
I can't wait till your book comes out. I can't wait till your book comes, because I'm serious. This is going to help a lot of people. I feel like even your methodology, and as well as you're very digestible, and as well as to the point and helpful as to the meaning behind why it would be serving your highest and well-being when you do this kind of work for yourself.
I think it's important for people to understand the why. I mean, that's the first tenet that I teach, and everyone talks about it, but it's, if you're going to go through the work of doing all this stuff that's hard, that feels overwhelming and scary, you should know why you're doing it, right?
Do you feel also in your life, or even in your field of work, do you feel like some insights or perspectives that you believe are unique, or they're not commonly discussed? Like, do you feel like anything in your field hasn't been known just yet from what you've uncovered?
I think that it's a lot's been talked about. I think it's how people talk about it, how they're giving information. Because with the way I put information out, like I was saying before, might not work for other people. I think a common misconception that I don't think is talked about, but I think it's maybe intellectually known, is that it's all learned. You're not, I'm just not organized, or I grew up with a messy house, or, or people, Francesca, did you talk to your doctor about that? Are you sure it's okay? Like, people don't trust in themselves. They don't, it's learned though. I think that anything that you really want to do, I think is learned. I think you have to find, the tools and the people and what have you that help you, like we were talking before, be quiet the noise. So it's probably all kind of been talked about. And sometimes I feel like, oh God, people know this. And my friends will be like, no, they don't. I'm like, okay, are you sure? Because it feels like, people are writing about it. But I do think that everyone has a story and everyone shares their story differently and their perspectives. And there's something to teach. And I think then there's something to learn, and vice versa. I don't think that I'm the only person, and I don't think I'm the expert, and what I say goes. I think that it can be used as, just pieces of information, take or leave, right? Let go of whatever doesn't serve you. And at least I hope that that's, what people will take from it. They'll get something from it, and maybe match that up against something else they heard. And in general, we're saying similar things,
Yeah.
but it's how it comes out, and how the story is shared. I think story is just so
It
important.
fits. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, even like noticing. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, I have I was going to say I have a master's degree in diversity studies, and
Amazing. Yeah.
and my thesis work focused on this, idea of being an agent of change, and that self-knowledge and self-awareness is that root for me of social change. And
Yes.
I think that this idea of knowing yourself well, you like yourself, and when you like yourself, you do more good. I just think, when you feel good, and think about your most highest vibration that you feel, you do good for yourself, for others, for the world. And I just think that that's what we need more of. So I'm a huge fan of finding different ways to know yourself, avenues to share your story. That's why I was saying, like, even astrology, it's like, oh my God, it's
So
like so
powerful.
fascinating to me.
Yes.
It is. And it's
But what
powerful
you're saying is very
to learn all
powerful
these
too.
aspects. Oh, thank you.
What, yeah.
To learn all these different aspects of yourself is important, and it builds that person. It builds this stuff inside of you. And I think that I personally believe, and of course I can say this because this is my thing, that minimalism and organization together, they're two sides of the same coin in a sense. But I really believe that minimalism is this idea of thinking about your life, what it is that you want, who you want to be, and then just making the decisions on letting in the things that allow you to do that, and letting out what doesn't. It's a constant. It's not like, oh, I let that out, okay, it's gone for good. Clearly it's not. My story tells you it's not. Like, these limiting beliefs kept coming back. First it was fertility, then it was with motherhood. Like, it's I'm okay that it's a constant battle. I'm okay being messy, because I think that's part of, and sharing it, because people should know, no, motherhood, no, it's hard. So if someone tells you it's not, they're lying, because it's hard. And what makes it hard is not putting dinner on the table. What makes it hard is me trying to constantly battle myself and be the best that I can be for my daughter, while constantly knowing myself, right? Constantly.
Yes. Because you're evolving over time, especially with someone that you're sharing a life with, your partner, your child.
Yes, your child.
You're merging all of your lives and souls together.
Yep.
And even like living space, and like you have to like work with them with that too. Learn how to exist together peacefully.
And that's where that, right. And so
that's
so it all comes down to it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the mental clutter, it's the physical clutter. And either way, if you've got too much of anything, you really thwart your ability to settle down and quiet down. You have to declutter. I hate that word sometimes.
No, I love that word. Say it. It's an amazing word.
Declutter.
It
is. It really it's needed. And I think that the results of what happens if you just give it a chance, like just try it. It's really, really cool. The transformations I've seen for myself, but also that I've helped other people go through. It makes me feel, that makes me feel so good. It's why I do this.
It's fulfilling for you.
It's so fulfilling.
Yeah.
Because it's like, isn't that the coolest thing? And they're like, Francesca, I never thought, I know, isn't it great? Like, it's so great to see people come into their own and create in different ways. Because like I said, that high vibration, then they go and do these things. And then that effect, that's how I know it sounds all cliche, but that's how it all works.
But it comes in full circle. Yes.
you know,
because even your
and that's what
living
we need
space.
more of.
Yeah, because from what I'm
Yeah.
analyzing, even with clients that I worked with, I usually see intuitively, as I mentioned before, like you got to clear out
Yeah.
the basement,
Oh
literally the basement. They're like, I was thinking about actually cleaning out my basement. I was just like, yeah, because I feel like, because whenever I look at people's birth charts, I have a sense of knowing as to what they're going through in the present moment intuitively.
yes.
And
Yes.
whenever people actually go through the whole physical removal of things that they don't need in their space anymore, that's what actually helps them find out what the root of their emotional
What the
dis-ease or mental dis-ease and stuff like that. 'Cause
yes.
the physical,
Yes.
we're in a physical reality.
Yes. Yep.
And our
Yep.
emotional and mental and spiritual is like secondary in a way. So
Yes.
as long as you have this whole space of learning how to like, utilize your energy like through the physical realms, you
Yeah.
actually feel more optimized in other areas of your life too.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then it comes down to if that, because some people they chalk everything up to, they blame everything else and
It's so
the boss and the
consumed.
traffic and whatever, then they're not that's okay. I just, there are people who do want more, and they get that when they do
Oh
what
my gosh.
you've just said. So it's so cool,
Yes.
isn't it?
I know. Oh my
Cool.
gosh, you're so much fun to talk to. And this is usually the last question I ask my guests on the show is like, where do you find self-empowerment and as well as self-acceptance in your life?
So so similar to what I was just saying about
Mm-hmm.
quieting the thing down. I think that self acceptance and worthiness comes from that self knowing that I was talking about, and I think it's always more easily realized in silence. And I say that as somebody who is, anyone knows me, like I'm not quiet. I like to talk, and I'm
But
Italian.
you have a lot to
So
share.
I have a
That's
lot to
what it
share.
is. You have a
That's
lot to
correct.
share. Well, you're third
Um,
house stellium. I get it. I'm a third house stellium too. So your third house
so
is mind.
so
So
there's
yeah,
right. So there's a lot, and I like it to come out. I
you
like
need
it to
to.
come out.
Mhm.
And it's my worst enemy when things feel like messy, right? When I need to, when I'm not, because when things are messy, I'm not feeling that, like we were talking about, it reminds me of, oh my God, I'm not good enough. It happens, and I think it happens to the best of us. I don't think that there's any shame in feeling that. I think that it's unfortunate if you can't admit that maybe you wrestle with enoughness, or if you do, or shame or whatever. I think that those are all things that kind of can bring your self-acceptance and your esteem down. So when you quiet the noise of all those things that are telling you aren't enough, and when you listen within and you ground yourself, you find yourself, right? And it's from that spot that I think, like I was saying, you can more consistently love yourself, and therefore, you know, uh, spread more love in the world. So when things are off track for me, I try and I meditate, definitely. Try not to look, I'm usually in a tizzy because mostly because I'm looking too far ahead and feeling overwhelmed and anxious. And oh my God, la, la. So I meditate, try and sit in silence. One of my best friends is a mindfulness coach, and she'll always tell me, Jessica, just go outside, and I just want you to take your shoes off, and I want you to stand under the tree in your yard, because it's a grounding exercise. And she first told me this, we had just adopted, well, no, we had already had adopted, and I was just, whatever, I was in a spot, and she said, just go outside. And like, listen, you're crazy, because I can't right now. Like, I know you're telling me, I know it works because but I just do it. She's not even a very forward. She's like, just go do it and tell me when you're done. And sure as shit, it worked. Like, it was just like, it was 5 minutes. My perspective completely changed. It works. It can be hard to see, back to that small thing. It could be hard to see that a small thing can give big results,
It was
right?
a pivotal moment in your life. Yeah.
It was a very pivotal moment. And, someone comes to me and they're overwhelmed, and I don't know, oh my God, I don't have time, and there's so much clutter. And I said, okay, well, that's what I said. Like, let's do the drawer. You start small. It's always something small. 10 minutes, grab a trash bag, do one drawer, do one shelf, remove, that's it. And then, okay, just one little thing. And I think the same thing when you're trying to ground yourself, trying to find yourself, trying to, build your esteem.
Know yourself more.
Know yourself more. 5 minutes under a tree, right? 10 deep breaths, meditation, go for a walk, talk to a friend, anything to just recalibrate, rejuvenate infuse something different, slow it down. Meditation is, as you know, I mean, I love it.
I love it too.
Used to be one of those things that, it definitely raises my vibration. It puts me on a different trajectory, but originally it was like, because I'm a perfectionist, it's like, well, hold on a second. Oh God, okay, I got to do this right. And I can totally do this. Oh my God, this is so not working. And then I read 10% Happier by Dan Harris. My God, what a great book. That's a book that I will never get rid of. His story is really great if you haven't read it, but he talks about meditation. It's not about doing it, as most people say, to your point about like, oh, is there something that we all saying the same thing? It's like everyone says the same thing about meditation, but they say it differently. And all of a sudden it resonates like, oh, he's basically saying the same thing everyone's saying. You don't have to do it perfectly, but by sitting down and practicing it, when you are in a state of, you can recall more easily, right? You can recall more easily how that feeling is. Oh, that's right. If I just quiet down, all right, just 3 deep breaths. Let me focus on one word. Whatever it is. So I try and remember that. My friend who's a mindfulness coach, I was telling me, she's always, did you meditate? Why don't you just take 2 minutes, or just go outside, or just to remind you to just, recalibrate, slow things down, which is exactly what minimalism, which is exactly what organization does. It's like, if you get something completely organized and people go, well, Francesca, I can't keep up with that. I'm not asking you for everything to be perfect. I'm in fact saying, let life get messy. Let my daughter come in and, okay, this, and we've got to do the math, and and Dad, can you help with, and I'm making dinner, and I'm trying to clean up. The point about it is that I can restore things back because I don't have too much, because I have set up systems, and because it is my desire to restore the space back so I can feel quiet again, right? So we can start from ground zero again, because it's going to happen again, right? She's still going to get off the bus every day. I'm still going to be making dinner. It's going to keep happening. So it's, how can you restore it back to that? That's a little off topic with
that was so powerful though, because you're right. I from what I'm receiving is like silence, be more present, slow down. So I got chills. I said it. So yes, it's just like, even when I'm working with clients, it's the same thing. I'm just like, why are you fast forwarding ahead? Why are you looking at next year?
Because we're
why
scared.
Are you looking at next year for the relationship? Or why are you looking next year for this passing storm? I said, let's deal with the storm right now. Let's silence the mind and figure out the way for you to transmute this. Like, that's how I usually talk to them. It's the same thing as well as minimalism. I see the parallels.
Because you're not solving the whole thing at once. You're saying we have to slow it down so we can find even where we start.
Core issue. Yes.
Right. And then we pick it apart. Then we schedule, and then we that's powerful. How you work through mess.
Oh my gosh.
Everyone's got mess.
No, everybody. Who doesn't? I mean, that's the beauty of life. It's all about creating the order in it and then seeing it become art again.
That's right.
Or like a mixed medium of art. What can we do to craft this into an incredible thing?
Yeah.
And that's life. I love it. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Francesca. It's so beautiful. Just before we log off, I mean, it's so incredible, this discussion. I loved it. I feel so energized talking to you, and I'm sure everybody does, whoever works with you. So for anybody who's listening to this and watching, like, where can we find you online, as well as follow you and all those things?
So yes. So francescaverri.com is my website. Yay, just my name. And there you can find all my my program. You'll see my when it gets launched, but you'll see how you can work with me. I'm on Facebook. It's at Very Well, which I know I'm supposed to change, but they make it very difficult. So I haven't done that yet.
That's okay.
At Very Well, and Instagram is at Francesca Anna Verri, because they wouldn't let me have Francesca Verri. And YouTube is Francesca Verri, and LinkedIn is Francesca Verri.
Fabulous. I'm going to post it on the show notes here. So for anybody who wants to click it, and they'll directly.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
All
right. Would love to. I like to engage with people there too. Sometimes I'll post some things and someone asks a question. It's fun, and it's fun to be able to talk.
I love it. You're like the troubleshooter. I know you're like a troubleshooter on the go. I'm like that too. Oh my gosh, such a common thing.
It's so hard not to be like, oh, I've totally got the solution. I mean, I just like to help. I do like to help. I really do.
And oh my gosh.
That fulfills me so much to know that, I've got this thing that I feel passionate about that I can help someone with. So why would you don't struggle with it? Yeah.
Oh, I love this. But even our discussion today, I'm sure is going to help a lot of people
I
at
hope
least shift
so.
their mindset. So this was such
Yeah.
an incredible episode. So I can't wait to
Thank
launch
you.
this. And thank you so much for
you.
joining me today. And I'm
No,
definitely
thank
going to invite
you.
you back. But you're such a
Okay.
wonderful joy and everything. So thank you. And
Thank you very
for
much.
everybody who's watching Align Your Stars podcast, thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, and share and notify. And I will see you next week. Be well.